Hi, how's it going? This is Resident of Collinwood for YouTube, here to do a read-along review of Benight and Beguile. Book 6, Chapter 10, Maloon? Part 1. Everything seems so perfect. A cool, fresh night with not a single cloud in the sky. The villagers all gathered in Village Park under long strands of glimmering bulbs that hung from street lamps that bordered the large tree-filled parks. Children played funny moon-themed games. Ladies are sat in groups of 4 and 5, gossiping about the latest village news. That, of course, included the Lord family and their constant drama. Gentlemen in top hats and long black coats smoked and cracked jokes while music played in the center of it all by a large orchestra supplying the soundtrack. Everything seemed perfect just as the moon slowly rose over the full off horizon where its full face would soon bathe them all in its gray light supplied by the sunken sun. Off in the distance, almost as if they were hiding who they were. Father Donovan Ryan and Fatima Braga arrived together. Fatima covered her white hair with a black shawl, hoping no one would recognize the town palm-reading fortune-teller arriving with the parish priest. She swung the long side of the scarf around her neck, allowing it to cover half her face and hope she could somehow hide her identity and still be able to thwart anything her son Philip was about to do in his wolf form. How do we know he'll come here? Ryan asked. He'll feel the hearts beating. It'll be the pulse of the city. We've all covered here. It will be a pounding beat in his mind, like the ticking of a clock. Fatima replied cryptically. Donna Fatima, Ryan began as he pulled her back by the shoulder before they entered into the park. Cannot allow him to hurt anyone. Do you understand? If he's discovered, the villagers will kill him. Fatima lifted a brow at Father Ryan, irritated. You speak as if it hasn't crossed my mind. I want to stop him as much as you do, Padre Donovan. No, but we have to find him first, Fatima replied, using his Portuguese name. You speak as... Oh, sorry, yeah. Father Ryan nodded and released his hand from her shoulder. She swung the hanging shawl once again round her face and head, and together they entered Village Park. Philip, in his wolf form, would come, and they could somehow stop him before calamity struck. Let's see. Across town, near the edge of town, on a street that led up a hill to a small house that clung to a bluff overlooking the rocky coast, two women walked together on their way to the village park. They were young ladies smartly dressed for the celebration. Night was to be full of energy and life, just as they were. As they headed down the quiet, drunken road, they laughed over stories of the gentlemen they had in their lives. They basked in the silly jokes of youth and gentle things of summer evening stroll arm in arm. It was so quiet that night that the tapping of their boots echoed on the cobblestone streets between their giggles, and then another sound. The odd sudden rustling behind them made one of the women yank her friend back and stopped, then dead in the street. What was that? She asked. What was what? The older woman wondered, still giggling over the story she just heard. The first woman, a blonde, lifted the rim of her hat slightly, and looking off in the distance where she could see the glow of the town square and village park. Nothing, the blonde replied, shaking off the she chills received up her spine. They continued to walk all the way. Something rustled in the bushes behind them and ducked under trees and hid behind buildings as the friends got deeper into the village. So what do you think of that Evie story in Baxter's column the other day? The dark-haired lady asked. Oh, it's all just silly stories, don't you think? The blonde replied. My father has always said that the lords were hiding something about themselves inside those walls at Terramore. Maybe Sebastian's weird lust for blood is the answer, the dark-haired woman said, giggling at the absurdity of it all. Evie's become the blonde, stupid mid-sentences. Suddenly, rustling of brush began again off the side of the street. There it is again, the dark-haired woman said in a whisper. Come on, the blonde replied, yanking on the dark-haired woman. Let's get to town before we... Then, without a single second of allowance for the blonde to finish her sentence, in a whip of air, a blur of black and gray leaped in front of the two young village women. It was Philip, in the vicious wolf form. The woman screamed at the sight of his hunger, gaping jaws that were dripping with saliva and fury. His giant paws passed across the woman's face, and without her noticing, her screaming suddenly stopped and turned to a gurgle sound. Her throat had been slashed. The dark-haired woman, who didn't finish her sentence, grabbed onto her blonde friend's bleeding and limp body and tried to go back up the hill. She dug her nails into the blonde's arm, cutting into the exposed skin. A fear fell over both women, the likes they'd never felt before in all their lives. The blonde passed out and slumped to the ground as the wolf circled his prey. He growled deeply and sniffed the blood in the air. Get back! Get back! The dark-haired woman screamed as she slipped in the friend's blood, but it was too late. They'd met their end. Philip Braga, the wolf of the full moon, pounced and slaughtered the two innocent women right in the center of the street, ripping them apart. They lay there, the happy party dresses soaked in blood, dead and silent. No more happy stories of the men they loved. No more smiles and giddy girlish skipping down a cobblestone street. Father Ryan's fear of death had come true again, and the body count was mounting. Back in the village square, Evie Matthew arrived together in a state of wonder at all the people and festivities all around them. The village square and park was completely turned into a sparkling world of lights and happiness that emanated an energy that the three had never felt before. It didn't help that as the two walked in, all eyes were on the couple who seemingly defied the odds and fate and returned from being buried alive and from being lost at sea. Everyone was staring. Evie noticed. Matthew gulped. Yes, Matthew. A friendly voice called from the inside the large gathering of townspeople. It was Lucas Morrill. Lucas, Matthew replied happily. Lucas, this is Evie. Evie, this is Lucas. He's the one who saved me. Evie reached over and grabbed Lucas warmly and helped him. Thank you for everything, she said. Because of you, I found something very important in my life again. Matthew's eyes sparkled. Evie's words were like music to his ears. After all the hoping she'd love him again. If anything, Matthew has helped me more. I've come so far since I've moved here, and Matthew is too. Thanks for that. Lucas has applied for citizenship. He's been working with Lear Lockwood a few days a week, making sure his citizenship paperwork goes through. Oh, he replied. The name Lear Lockwood began being foul sounding to her ears. Matthew noticed, is something the matter? Lear was the lawyer who helped Jacob and Celeste take my son from me. When I hear his name, I tend to go back to realizing I don't have my son with me every day, she reminded them. Oh, Lucas replied disappointedly. He's been very kind. I wish you could meet the man I met. He's becoming more than my advocate, really. He's becoming a close friend. Evie looked over at Lucas. The way he said close friend, he was not unfamiliar to her. She had known two other men were seemingly as close enough to be partners in life, partners in love. Evie was quickly reminded of Dr. Andrew Kim and the story he told her of his own love story with his longtime medical partner, Dr. Michael Daphne. It was a new way of looking at two people who loved each other and wanted the best for each other. She didn't understand it at first, but over time she realized love was love no matter how it was generated, or where it came from, or how it was expressed between two adoring partners. Now Evie could see that all love was the same. Well, Welshport seems to be treating you much better than it did me, and I'm very happy for it, Lucas, Evie said with a grin as she squeezed his hand. She could see this same in his, spark in his. Lucas spoke of Lear as the way Andrew spoke of Michael. The only downside was Evie didn't trust Lear in the slightest. Just keep your eye on him, Evie said with a wink. Does he sometimes run off and hide? Lucas joked. I won't say that. No, she laughed. I should be fair. I've just met him myself, but he's related to my in-laws, and if I know anything about family I'm married into, you'll want to keep both eyes wide open, Evie explained. Lucas grinned and took her advice. Duly noted. Let's see, go down here. 2-4. And if and as if summoned by the simple speaking of the name Lord, they appeared, Rebecca, Jacob, Caspian, Fabian, Cora, and little Gabriel, the entire group arriving to even more glaring eyes at the full moon celebration. Evie's eyes zeroed in on her little baby, whose green eyes floated over to her in a way inexplicable. Their mother-son connection was undeniable to anyone who watched. Cora handed the child to Celeste, and Celeste walked over to Evie, who was already on her way to them. They met in the center of the park, encircled by the entire town. Celeste stood there holding baby Gabriel and smiled, then happily handed the child to his birth mother. He misses you, Celeste said as the crowd all chattered all around him. I've missed him too, so much, Evie said, kissing her baby's cheeks. Rebecca looked on proudly, happy to see Evie and Gabriel back together. I've convinced Jacob to allow Gabriel to be with you tonight during the festivities. He didn't take much. It didn't. Yeah, it didn't take much. He knows how important a mother and child relationship is. Celeste noted, with a thin veiled description of how Jacob's relationship with his own mother was strained. Evie furrowed her brow. He should be with me, period. Evie, you know that we have to disentangle everything with the cords. As soon as we do that, Gabriel can be with you again, Celeste replied. You want me to trust you, but how can I? You were involved in taking him from me too. How am I supposed to just trust you now? You've had a change of heart. Celeste held in a deep sigh. You had burned this bridge with her former best friend, not only was her marriage to Jacob incredibly problematic because of his history for tormenting Evie in the past, but Celeste had her own hand in taking Gabriel when they all believed Evie had died. The truth could not be erased from anyone's mind, and Celeste's word was in a ruined state. All I can do is ask you to believe me. That's it. That's all I can do, and I hope you remember how close we were and how much I am beginning to regret what I did, Celeste confessed. Evie did not reply, but as she began to turn, Celeste reached for her arm and pulled her back. Wait, Evie held on to the baby, her trauma triggering the idea of Celeste would suddenly have a change of heart. What do you know about Jacqueline Gray? You spoke of her the other day at Terramore, and that whole conversation made me think there was more to what you made of it, Celeste explained. Evie raised her brow. Celeste, do you think I would help you after what you've done? Evie, you're not a cruel person. I know what I've done. I truly did it for Gabriel's sake. Look, you may know by now that Jacqueline is romantically involved with my brother. And Evie interrupted, they're married, Celeste. Married. Evie's reminder of marriage cut through the music in the park, and Celeste's ears like a bullet. She gulped in the truth. Well, I don't have a good feeling about her, Celeste explained. Seeing Celeste come off in real distress made Evie decide to take the high road and be careful with her words. She knew all too well Jacqueline's danger. I wanted nothing to do with the witch and her treachery, but at the same time, didn't want anyone else drawn into Jacqueline's twisted web of lies, even if it were Celeste's brother. Still, Evie needed to be careful. Ironically, I was just having a similar talk with Lucas over there, Evie said, turning to Matthew. And Lucas, still standing off to the side, waiting for her to return. He's become very good friends with Lear. I mentioned how I didn't trust Lear as far as I could throw him, thanks to him being such a good aid to you taking my child from me. Nevertheless, I'll give you that advice to Celeste. Friend to friend, watch Jacqueline like a hawk. Never let her out of your sight. Why? Can you tell me why? Celeste said, her anxiety suddenly spiking. Evie perched her lips. The feeling of wanting to be honest and open filled her quickly, but then she realized perhaps she could let Celeste and the Lords fall into Jacqueline's clutches, but in reality, Evie couldn't do that. She was too honest for that. She has her own motives for doing whatever she does. The good things and the bad things. Just keep an eye on her. And most of all, Celeste, don't believe anything you see with your own eyes. She's quite the magician. With those last strange cryptic words, Evie walked back to Matthew and Lucas, who melted over the sweet little Gabriel, leaving Celeste in the center of the park with more questions than answers. That went well, Rebecca said, coming over to her daughter-in-law by Jacob. I'm happy you did that, she said. Oh, my wife has a wonderful heart, Jacob replied. She's the giver of the family. She's just given Evangeline a wonderful memory of the full moon festival. I'm sure tonight will be an incredible night for them. For us all. Caspian added as he came over. She deserves her son, that's all, Celeste replied. Off under a cluster of Village Park's large beech trees that had strings of lights swaying in the summer. In summer breeze, Jacqueline and Jonathan sipped on sweet drinks the celebration committee provided for the festival goers. Jonathan, his mind completely locked in Jacqueline's love spell, only had eyes on her. He studied her face, the soft curve of her jaw, her tight curls of dark honey, hair that fell on her shoulders. She smiled, a bright light in the night that revealed the moon's glow. Jonathan was completely locked in love, and early in the day they had a thrust in bed. She smirked at him under the strains of light. Her eyes began to twinkle the same color as the bulbs above their head that hung from the park's trees. She began to telepathically sway him memories of their love making just hours ago in the, his bed at Terramore House. He could still taste her kiss, smell her skin. She, too, could almost feel his body on hers the way they were in bed. The passion that flowed through their bodies, was like a roaring river crashing down again against rigid rocks in powerful bursts. Today, sorry, was truly one of the most amazing days I've ever experienced, the mind control Jonathan said. You're the amazing one, she whispered over. She whispered over her paper clip of sweet tea that she purchased in a small vendor's stand. I've never felt like this about anyone in my whole life, Jacqueline, he added. I've tried to find someone just like you, and when I finally thought it would never happen, especially after what happened with Genevieve, there you were, a beautiful stranger sitting in a pub with the face of an angel and the body of a goddess. Jacqueline felt the touch of true love in her heart, but she had to shake off that feeling. She knew her love spell was causing him to express his feelings in a way that were more in line with her magic than his true love, but it warmed her heart nonetheless. She missed Sebastian so much that this is what she wanted to hear from him, and yet could not even find him with magic and have him return to her. Jonathan, for now, would have to do. There isn't any other place I'd rather be than with you right here. She, right now, she replied, lying, and in our bed as husband and wife, she reminded him. He leaned over and kissed her passionately. Little children passing by giggled with embarrassment and rushed off laughing, while the woman snickered at the public show of affection. Jonathan's bewitched mind could care less. He continued to kiss her like a newlywed man would to his blushing bride. As they kissed, a person cleared their throat, alerting to the arrival. Jonathan and Jacqueline turned to see Celeste standing there with her son Fabian. He wanted to come to say hello to Uncle Johnny, she said. Well, old sport, look at you all dressed up for the festival. Are you ready to celebrate the giant moon we're going to see in a few hours? Jonathan asked, squatting down to be eye level with his little nephew. The little boy squeaked with glee. Look, Jacqueline began. You can already see it peeking over the hills. It's almost here. You've been rather distant lately, Johnny. Jacob and Rebecca aren't too happy you haven't been at the office, Celeste said. Jacqueline shied away and stepped back. I've been on my honeymoon, he replied. I deserve that, don't I? Jonathan, you haven't even been there one day before you. Celeste paused, looking at Jacqueline. Got married, she said, finishing her thought. I love my wife. I want to be with her always, forever. all the time. I love my wife, Jonathan said almost robotically. Celeste tilted her head. I know that, she replied, finding his response odd, but you have a responsibility to your family, and before Rebecca decides she wants to renege on her promise you to give you more a valuable position at the company, this is what you had been wanting, isn't it? Celeste pushed. He wants it, Jacqueline said. He wants it because, well, I was going to wait to tell her one at a different time, but perhaps this is the time to say it. Say what? Celeste wondered. I love my wife, Jonathan said again in his bewitched mind. I'm having our child, Jacqueline said, surprising Celeste and Jonathan alike. You're, Celeste began. Having my baby, Jonathan replied gleefully. I am. Jonathan jumped in the air like a schoolboy and scooped up his new wife into his arms, kissing her all over. Jacqueline's eyes glowed. Only Jonathan could see them. He was trapped, locked in an affair with a woman who did not love him. She was using him for protection. She was using his connection to Sebastian's family to keep herself near the man she truly loved. Jonathan was the key to unlock that door. The icy vibe Celeste shot her way at their every interaction, sign that Celeste would do what she could to split them up. No matter how powerful a spell Jonathan was trapped in, a true loving sister would and could break it if she tried hard enough. But a baby changed everything. I'm early, but I know that I'm having your brother's baby, and I cannot wait for Fabian to have a little cousin, Jacqueline said. Come, Jonathan, said, grabbing Jacqueline's hand. Let's tell everyone. The two quickly ran off and told every person they encountered at the park that they were newlyweds and were having a child sometime next year. A spring baby. Jacob walked over to see the seething Celeste. He picked up his son, who looped his little arms around his father's muscular neck. Now what? Jacob grumbled to Celeste, starting out into the dimly lit, staring out to the dimly lit park with hundreds of celebrating Welsh Portians. Celeste told her husband the news. You're going to be an uncle again. Jacob rolled his eyes. What do you do about that? She asked. Jacob turned to his wife. He had seen this devious side from her before, but never aimed at her own brother Jonathan. But Celeste realized Jacqueline was something else. She had swept into Jonathan's life and twisted her way into the family with an unknown reason. They had no idea her true motives. But now a child was involved, and that would link Jonathan to Jacqueline forever. Is this a real question? Or are you asking me rhetorically? Because I can give an answer for both, Jacob replied as he cuddled with 5-year-old Fabe, his son, in his arms. She cannot have this child. I cannot allow that. He's not ready, she replied. Ah, Jacob replied. So you want a real answer. I want you to take tonight and forget about all this Jonathan business. We'll deal with him after the festival. Enjoy tonight, my love, because tomorrow is a new day. A new moon, and we'll deal with whatever this Jack and Gray had done to dear old Johnny. Trust me, I can take care of all of it. So, Jacob kissed his wife on the cheeks. Jacob's an ass, but you would think, she could look at Jacob and say, listen, there's something about this woman, without revealing who he told her. Told her, yeah. We'll see, we'll see. He left Celeste alone under the group of beech trees, wondering what it was she had just requested of her husband, a man known to murder his own family members. She might have just made the biggest mistake of her life. Jacob, wait. Celeste stood alone now under the beech trees, watching her husband go back into the celebrating crowd, holding their little baby in the brush. Something stirred. It watched Celeste, whose mind was occupied with worry over her brother and his new wife. There was movement in the brush behind her. She turned, hearing the cracking in branches and crun- crunching of leaves, by something clearly large. "Who's there?" Celeste asked. "Come out, I hear you." Prowler did nothing but watch in the shadows, its yellow eyes hidden in the dark. It was the wolf, Philip, sniffing the air hunger for more human flesh. Celeste slowly walked over to the bushes, thinking a child or some random Lord family gawker was watching her and her husband Jacob as they spoke. She stepped closer to the shadowy bushes under the beech trees and reached over to pull back some of the brush, hoping to see what it was that was watching her so secretly. She pulled back a fishful of branches and revealed nothing but a hidden raccoon that scurried off into the other side of the brush. Philip, the wolf, still hidden to Celeste's right side, hid. His physique would not attack the woman he once loved. For over for over 10 years, Celeste turned, and the wolf slowly made its way to the other side of the park, sparing Celeste's life. Later that night, walking back into the crowd, Jacob and Fabian ran into a shrouded Fatima and Father Ryan, who both grew increasingly worried about the entire situation. Everyone in town was in Village Park. To the hunting wolf, they were sitting ducks, awaiting his vicious jaws to rip them all apart to shreds. Jacob, ever the keen observer, noticed their nervous demeanor. "Well, good evening, Father Ryan. I didn't think someone of your stature would grace the village for such a silly occasion as a full moon," Jacob said, turning to the shawl-covered Fatima. "And who, may I ask, is this? Oh, good evening, Mr. Lord, and young Fabian. I know you know Miss Braga," Father Ryan said, feeling odd for showing up to the celebration with the town fortune-teller. "Palm readers at the full moon festival. Yes, the parish priest. No," Jacob joked. "Fatima is an old friend," Father Ryan noted, "and a parishioner," he added. "Parishioner. We were at St. Catherine's, and I decided to walk her over." "Is that so?" Jacob asked, clearly detecting a lie. "And how are you finding the night's party, Miss Braga?" Fatima did not want to speak, and she also wanted to throw Jacob off their clearly nervous energy. The wolf could sense fear about Jake, but Jacob could sense a lie from a mile away. Like, "No." "Charming," Fatima said. "How are your children, Mr. Lord? I haven't seen your Charlotte and the Thorn boy with you in town in a very long time." Jacob smirked, seeing Fatima trying his patience, and lifted a brow. "Morgan, of course, poor chap, has his own issues dealing with his mother Genevieve's sudden departure to parts unknown, but he's doing nicely. We've all taken to him as soon as one of our own. Actually, I'm assuming he's doing well. Of course, he and Charlotte are with her mother. I predict they're well, but of course, being a card reader, you could have predicted that too, no?" Fatima scolded Jacob, but before she could snap back at him, clearly attempting to shake off her wits, Father Ryan interrupted. "Well, God bless then," he said. A small, as a small Turner's sour, a devilish howl echoed from beyond the village park and cut through the music like a thunderclap in the sky. There was audible gasps. The band stopped playing. People were startled. Never had they ever heard such a blood-curdling, monstrous sound before, not from any other native wolf of the Terramore forest. Fatima shot a look at Father Ryan. Mr. Lord, enjoy the night, and please be careful, Father Ryan said, excusing himself and grabbing Fatima by the arm as they walked off. He's coming, Fatima whispered. Jacob watched them as they walked away and wondered who he was. Dr. Ward and his wife, Laurel, stood at a booth where children were enjoying the company of small goats and lambs. It was the sweetest moment in a tense time. Their granddaughter, Samantha, just a sweet little 4-year-old child with curly blonde hair, could stand being held in Laurel's arms. Another second with the adorable lambs in front of her. All right, stop wiggling, Laurel said, allowing little Samantha some space to pet a lone lamb laying in the booth. She's quite beautiful, Caspian said, walking up to the Wards and Rebecca. Very, Rebecca added. Hello, Laurel smiled, surprised to see to her old friend. Are you both enjoying the evening? I was expecting it to be a little cooler, but the summer night has proven itself to be quite nice, Dr. Ward said. Oh, absolutely wonderful, Caspian added. Small talk between the four went well. They spoke of the evening and how this special full moon festival was different than the last, since it was the first of the summer season. Laurel and Rebecca, two very old friends, joked about their times here at the festival as young ladies. They'd pit boys against each other for their affections and then leave them stranded with neither of the girls choosing any of them to court. The happier times before they were married. Before Rebecca was a lord, before Laurel was her handsmaid, and before the terrible tragedy of little Vivy's death and Rebecca becoming buried. Happier times were always easier to talk about than the dark days. But soon as the happy memories filled their minds, a rain cloud in the form of Constable Gregory Rains and Aurora Jordan entered the fray. Happy full moon, Aurora said, unsure of how to frame the festival, as it was her first. Mrs. Jordan, Constable, how are you both? Laurel asked. Well, thank you, Mr. Ward, Rains replied. Ward stared at Rains, his mind rushing back to his plot with Nick to find Ashia, who they believed was being held by Rains somewhere. Ward wanted to confront him, force him to tell them where Ashia was. He was furious that he had stand there and pretend that everything was fine. Then he knew nothing was fine. Ashia was not away somewhere with a sick mother. Ashia was being held somewhere by Rains. And no one could know the truth until Nick was able to sneak in. It's so good of you to come out, Miss Jordan. I know that things have been rather stressed in the Jordan household, Caspian said. Aurora sighed, unsure of how to address Caspian, the man who at one time was possessed by a demon that tricked her mind and made her believe she was making love to Gregory, and in turn got her pregnant. Could she stand there and have small talk with a man she did not trust or even like? She relented, and for the sake of everyone watching around them, swallowed her pride. We're just glad everything is now changing for the better. And at least we hope, Aurora said, referring he was returned from the grave alive. We do too, Caspian answered. Change for the good is all we can pray for, he added. You pray, Caspian? Gregory asked, with a hint of sarcasm given Caspian's devilish history. But before he could answer, Rebecca changed the uncomfortable topic back to Aurora's children, but not before giving Gregory an icy stare. I've seen Evie but not Nicholas. Is Dr. Jordan working? Rebecca asked, changing the subject. Actually, no, I can't seem to, Aurora began before, but Dr. Ward. Yes, he is. He is, Rains asked. Yes, unfortunately, we had to ask him to come in since Dr. Hoffman has left Welshport, Ward said, keeping up appearances. Gregory squirmed. Has she? That's a shame. A young female doctor is such a wonderful push into a diverse future. What a loss for Welshport Hope, Rebecca said. Yes, apparently her mother was ill, and she had to rush off to be with her. Isn't that right, Constable? Ward asked, pushing Gregory to keep up his own line. I don't know if you say no. I don't know if you say so, Gregory returned. Why, I know you were very close friends. I would have assumed she told you she was leaving, did she not? Or grilled. I haven't spoken to she in a while, and she doesn't have to tell me when she leaves and when she returns. We're friends, but she owes me nothing, I replied with a lifted brow. Nick must be very sad she left, Laura added. They've gotten so close, and she didn't mention it to me. How odd, Aurora added. Perhaps it hurt too much, Rebecca said. No, actually, she sent a very strange typed letter to the hospital explaining her departure, which both Nick and I looked over. Very abrupt, in my opinion. Does that sound like something she'd do, Constable? Ward pushed. Again, Doctor, I am not her keeper. She's free to do as she likes. I hope her mother is well, that's all. Ward's eyes narrowed. He knew this was all lies. All of it. But he could not say another word. His wife, Laurel, noticed the odd pushing from her husband, but would wait to grill him herself later. Yes, I agree. She helped me when the baby was born, and I will forever be grateful that. I hope her mother gets well soon, Aurora said. Caspian felt his heart sink at the mention of the child he helped conceive, even if he didn't remember it. Rebecca looked over at her new husband. She saw his eyes link with Aurora's mention of the birth. His eyes were soft, somewhat watery. He was emotional and hurt, and Rebecca sensed it. Linked at the tie that bond Caspian and Aurora, they all believed did not survive, but it had. The child they all thought died at birth lived with Mary on Good Island. Dark secret Gregory was so adamant in keeping secret, and the whole reason a shield was locked away in his house. Well, let's all just enjoy the evening. The moon is already half risen. Look, Laurel said, pointing to the moon, as if it were just about 1/4 of the way directly above them. Samantha rushed over, and they all looked up into the sky with little binoculars, telescopes awaiting its full rise. Gregory, for his part, looked off into the distance, into the town where he was hidden as she. Dr. Ward noticed and seethed with anger watching the liar stand there and pretend everything was fine. Evie, Matthew, Gabriel, and Lucas sat on a blanket towards the center of the park. They were giggling and laughing, doing all they could to enjoy the night, bundled up together at the festival, and pretending to ignore the very eager onlookers watching their every move. One onlooker resist walk up to them. It was Baxter Murphy himself, the Welshport's globe writer with the poison pen, who had written the awful article slammed Sebastian for the death of the two fishermen the night before. Miss Lord, Mr. Winterbourne, good evening, Baxter Murphy, he began before being interrupted. We know who you are, Matthew said it, standing up to Baxter. What do you want? Before Baxter could answer, a photographer snapped a picture, leaving Evie and Gabriel seeing spots before a bright flash. Matthew grabbed the man's camera. "Hey," the photographer barked. "Matthew, no," Evie said. "We just want a little quiet. A little quote for the paper, Mrs. Lord." "No harm, no foul," Baxter replied, grabbing Matthew's arm and pulling it off the camera. "That's Globe's property," meaning the Lord's property. "I would catch a lawsuit so soon after returning from your own watery grave, sir." Baxter added with a snide eye. Evie wrapped a blanket around the baby and stood up to face Baxter. She stared at him, their eyes locked. He was craving interaction with her. This was his moment, the moment he had been waiting for all his career. A minute of time with someone he'd written about, and hopefully she'd give him a little juicy story for the next column. "I don't know where you get off lying to your readers, Mr. Baxter, but you're doing them all a disservice. Nothing you've written about Sebastian is true, and you know that. He had nothing to do with those deaths, and he's not even some kind of creature or hiding somewhere. It's ridiculous. No one believes you," Evie said. "No one?" Matthew added. "The thing is, Mrs. Lord, I think they do believe. Maybe Sebastian isn't that kind of creature that haunts their dreams at night, but we all know something is wrong with him," Baxter replied. "He's dead, Baxter. He's dead," Evie snapped back. Baxter sniffed and looked around. Everyone in the park near them was staring. The cameraman snapped more pictures. He leaned into Evie. Her skin felt as if it were crawling. She could smell the cigarette smoke on his breath. "No one believes that," he whispers, "and someday it'll all come out." Evie did not reply. "Come out of here?" Sorry, "get out of here," Matthew said as Lucas stood up and backed up his friend. They were all a wall together, Matthew, Evie, and Lucas and Baxter smiled at seeing that he'd made his mark. At his point, he shrugged off the icy reception they'd given him and handed Evie his card. "If you ever like to clear the air anytime, just give me a call or come by. You know where I work," Baxter said. With a wink, Evie took the card and ripped it up in his face. Baxter smiled and motioned to the photographer to back off as the two went back into the crowd. Outside the park, still watching every single moment, was Philip the Wolf. As Baxter walked away, standing with Jacob, Celeste, Thea, Rebecca, and Caspian, was Cora Taylor, Baxter's sister. She watched as her brother smugly walked around the crowd of Washportians and felt her stomach in knots. It was her fault. He'd written about that Sebastian. It was all her fault. She thought to herself. As everyone in the village celebrated in Village Park, awaiting the hour where the full moon uh, was highest in the sky, directly over the island, and fireworks would go off. Music would play, and dancing and libations would continue. Nick Jordan was dipping in and out and cast shadows and sneaking into Gregory Ramsey's home in hopes to find Ashia. Nick knew that the constable's office below Gregory's apartment would be open. It always was. He peeked into the glass of the front door and noticed there wasn't anyone in the office. It was odd. He thought he'd encounter at least one person, but he snuck. His luck, came in. All the other police were in the village square at the celebration. Nick slid into the office. The floors cracked his every step. He quickly walked over to the staircase that led up to Gregory's third floor apartment. Just before he ran up the fourth step, remembered the strange lettering of the typewriter that wrote Ashia's goodbye letter. Nick quickly went back down the staircase and saw that each of the 4 desks in the office had a typewriter. He went to the first and pulled off the top cover to see if the eternal key of the letter A was off-centered. It was not. And the second typewriter, the same. The letter A was fine. And or the third, fourth machine. None of the downstairs typewriters wrote the letter. Feeling he would find something upstairs, Nick dashed back up the staircase to the 3rd floor and found himself staring at Gregory Rains' door. He could hear the excitement coming from downstairs in the village, the fun, the happiness, the music. Inside, all he wanted to do was burst the door down and get Ashia. If she were there, and take her away. No matter what she did, how many times she lies, he did care for her deeply, and if she were being held captive, as he suspected, he wanted to be sure she got out alive. Nick crouched down and began to pick the lock of the apartment. It took several times, and finally the satisfying click of the unlatched lock sound. Nick turned the knob and entered the apartment. He looked around the front room. It was dimly lit by the lantern Gregory had left glowing on a side table. Nick walked slowly and quietly, hoping he would find proof that Ashia had been there. He searched for a garment of clothes, an extra coffee mug, a piece of forgotten jewelry, something, anything. As he searched, he saw a desk in the dark corner with a typewriter. He rushed over, pulled off the cover, and there it was, the off-center A. Proof Gregory must have written a letter posing as Ashia. Nick knew now she was there somewhere. As he walked through the front room and covered into a small hallway to the back room, his right foot hit the leg of the side table with the lantern, and the lantern fell over, burning slowly on the floor. Nick did not notice. He continued on into the house, opening doors, bathroom, a bedroom, a half closet. The door he opened, he called out to Ashia, but no response at first. Finally, cat's laying on my typewriter, my keyboard. Finally, he entered the main bedroom toward the back of the 3rd floor. The lantern in the living room began to burn more and more. The flames that followed the leaking lamp oil crawled across the burning liquid and caught a carpet. The flames lit up, and the room and smoke began to fill all around. Ashia, Nick said in the bedroom, still not noticing the front room was on fire. Ashia heard Nick. She began to struggle. She began to move around on the brass bed, using all the sound her gaggled mouth could make to make him hear in the secret room, the secret closet door. She rocked her bed back and forth. The bed banged her shoes on the brass footboard. Nick felt the walls hearing this. He kept calling for her, begging her to continue to make noise. He opened the closet. Ashia's noises were louder. Nick pulled back all the clothes hanging on the rod. The scratching of the hangers got louder and louder as he got closer to the secret door. She could hear he was close. She continued to move around and make noise. Nick saw the door. He felt with his hands to find where to open it. Finally, a latch, he pulled it open. Inside, Ashia on the bed, tied again. "Oh my God," Nick said, rushing over to her. Nick began to untie Ashia. He untied and removed the gag. She reached over and hugged and kissed him. "Oh, Nick, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for everything," she said hysterically. "Come on, we don't have," Nick began to say before stopping the sentence, and he smelled smoke. She sniffed the air. "I smell it too." They both got up from the room they were. When they went through the secret door, the closet, the bedroom was filled with thick black smoke and from the fire. "Fire!" Nick shouted. Nick grabbed at the cover. the bed. He threw it over Ashia and himself. They quickly made their way through the darkened smoke, filled the hallway, and into the front room that was completely engulfed in flames. "We can't get out," she screamed. "There must be a back way," Nick shouted over the licks of hot flames battering their bodies from the room. "It's so hot," she said. "Come on," Nick shouted, pulling her towards the burning kitchen. "There," he said, noticing a back door. "There's too much fire," she shouted. "We have to." Nick again began to speak, but the fire was so intense, the front room of the ceiling began to fall. Beams of wood tumbled from the top. Mounds of embers filled the adjoining kitchen, rushing Ashia and Nick's uh, face and body. "Cover your face," Nick shouted. "There's too much," Ashia shouted again, as she started to put out small flames on the blanket, covering them with her head. "We'll have to go, Nick. We have to go," Nick shouted. "Take my hand on the count of three, the blanket, and we run towards the door." She announced. "1, 2, 3, Nick shouted. As they went to the back kitchen door, they leaped over the fire from the burning floor, catching on the hem of Ashia's dress. Just as Nick grabbed the kitchen doorknob that led to the exterior staircase and street, the kitchen ceiling caved and all around them in an avalanche of burning cinders, ash, and flames. So that's the read along. So he's trying to save her. They may or may not be trapped in the fire. It's a good ending. It's really, really good suspense there. The wolf has killed 2 people, and the full moon still isn't. It still isn't up. It's gonna be up here. The question is, how many more will die? I do think that I wouldn't want to be by myself anywhere. But again, with wolves, large crowds don't really matter. It's sort of like being in the open water, and like you have a large group of people. But this here, you got a werewolf stalking large groups of people. The only person who may be as safe is Celeste. So we'll see. We'll see. Link to Benight and Beguile is going to be in the description box, guys. Go check it out.